So today we're going to be going over question 53 of the Westminster Shorter Catechism, which can be found, if you don't have it memorized, in your Trinity hymnal, page 669. So question 53 of the third commandment asks us this question: which is the third commandment? Answer: the third commandment is, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. In this commandment today, we'll be discussing how we aren't to take God's name in vain. There are a couple of things that are important for me to explain if we are to fully understand this commandment. Now, over the next few weeks, we'll be discussing what's required and what's forbidden in this commandment. And today, what I want to do is lay some groundwork so that we can fully understand what's required and what's forbidden. So, as I mentioned before, there are a couple of things that I think are important to understand in order to fully grasp this commandment. We need to understand, first and foremost, and this is what I'll be spending time going over today, what is meant by the word name and what is meant by the word vain. So, let me start by first talking about this word vain, since we aren't to take the name of the Lord in vain. Webster's dictionary defines vain as empty, worthless, having no substance, value, or importance. The Hebrew word used here for vain is shav, and is also translated as false, deceitful, and empty. So in the third commandment, when we are instructed to not take God's name in vain, God is telling us that he does not want for us to treat his name as empty, worthless, having no substance, value, or importance, falsely and deceitfully. So how is it that we do that? How do we ensure that we aren't taking God's name in this manner? Well, we'll get to that, but what I want to do now is move on towards explaining the word name. And the bulk of my lecture today will be focusing in on this. So the Hebrew word translated name is Shem. Overwhelmingly, this word Shem is translated name in the Bible, well over 650 times. But this word is also translated as fame, renown, and repute. The Greek word translated name is onoma, and much like Shem in the Old Testament, this word is overwhelmingly translated as name in the New Testament, over 200 times. So it's clear that in the uses of the word Shem and onoma, that it is what is meant by it is the word name. But as what I want to get at is really how that word name is used in the scriptures. And I think it's important for us to really think this through, because oftentimes when we think of the word name, we assume just the proper name of a thing, when in reality, it may mean more than that. For example, if I don't want someone to ruin my good name, I am not talking about ruining the name Jean-Pierre itself. And to kind of bring this, to explain this a little further, what I want to do is take a look at a couple passages and then explain what I mean by that. So let's take a look at first Psalm 143, verse 11. For the sake of your name, O Lord, revive me. In your righteousness, bring my soul out of trouble. Proverbs 22, verse 1. A good name is to be more desired than great wealth. Favor is better than silver and gold. Proverbs 30, verse 9. That I may not be full and deny you and say, who is the Lord? Or that I not be in want and steal and profane the name of my God. Isaiah 48, verse 9, for the sake of my name I delay my wrath, and for my praise I restrain it for you, in order not to cut you off. And in the New Testament, John 17, verse 26, I have made your name known to them, and will make it known, so that the love which you loved me may be in them, and I in them. In each of those instances, the word name, of course, is used, but it's not just talking about the name of God, but something much more than that. And now going back to the third commandment and looking at the fact that we're not to take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, what I want to get at here is in the third commandment, when it states that we aren't to do that, we aren't to take the name of God in vain, the word name is used as a synecdoche. So here's your grammar lesson for today, for those of you who might not know. A synecdoche is a figure of speech where a part of something is made to represent the whole, or vice versa, where the whole is made to represent the part. So let me give you a couple of examples to kind of bring this home. When the military sends boots on the ground, they did not throw a box of Timberland boot shoes on the floor, but boots is representative of men. When someone tells you, hey, those are some nice wheels that you have, they're not complimenting the fact that you have great Michelin tires, but they're talking rather about your car. When the White House issues a statement, we're talking about the president and his cabinet members. Each of these are examples of a synecdoche. So with that in mind, when we look at the word name, we aren't just talking about God's literal name, but also his titles, his attributes, ordinances, words, and works. John Calvin tells us this in regards to this very commandment. It is silly and childish to restrict this to the name Jehovah, as if God's majesty were confined to letters or syllables. But whereas his essence is invisible, his name is set before us as an image, insofar as God manifests himself to us and is distinctly made known to us by his own marks, just as men are each by his own name. On this ground, Christ teaches that God's name is comprehended in the heavens, the earth, the temple, the altar, because his glory is conspicuous in them. Consequently, God's name is profaned whenever any detraction is made from his supreme wisdom, infinite power, justice, truth, clemency, and rectitude. So the third commandment means much more than not just using God's name as a curse word. See, God's reputation is at stake. We must not treat God's reputation, his name, with contempt. Because God is holy, we must treat him and his works as holy. God is of immense value, ultimate value. Thus, we must not treat God as empty, worthless, having no substance, value, or importance. However, this is what we are doing when we take his name, his titles, his attributes, his ordinances, the word, the sacraments, prayers, oaths, vows, lots, his works, and whatsoever else there where he makes himself known in vain. The rejection of this commandment, I believe, has far-reaching implications. Why I believe this commandment is so important is because a rejection of this commandment, in my opinion, will lead to a rejection of all the other commandments. For example, if I decide to take God's name in vain by rejecting his authority over all mankind, wouldn't I be more likely to not take seriously his charge to serve no other gods but him? See, if I take God's name in vain by taking lightly how he structures the church, wouldn't I be more likely to deviate from his idea of worship or his holy day? How about how I treat my fellow man? If I take lightly God, who I claim to fear and serve, how will I treat my fellow man who I don't worship? So, please pay attention to this commandment as myself and Enro over the next few weeks explain to you what is required and what is forbidden in the third commandment. God takes his name seriously, and so should we. With that being said, let us rise to recite the 10 Commandments.